Let's unravel Geeta's world. Hello and welcome. This is the 102nd episode of Geeta's world. Geeta and I are here. And Geeta, we are discussing something that, this is a country, Afghanistan, which we discussed every 15th of August when, this was a time when US withdrew its troops and then Taliban took over. And somehow I feel that it has, Afghanistan as a country has been willfully ignored, or willfully forgotten? I think that's the question that we need to answer because it has often slipped off our geopolitical radar.
Or the political convenience of not being there, but wanting to have the presence and engage Afghanistan because of its geostrategic position, Anna.
Right.
Whatever it is, it has not been convenient for women in Afghanistan.
Definitely. I was just thinking that, we have a voice here. We are able to host. As a woman, I'm being able to host a discussion. You being the expert, you're able to put your thoughts
You're putting
across.
our faces out there.
Right. Yes, that's but if you are in Afghanistan, if you are a woman in Afghanistan, because these are the things, Geeta, that is beyond imagination. So we are discussing Afghanistan today because the new morality laws that have been come up by the Taliban rulers in Afghanistan that has quite, made an uproar. But then who is listening, right? Because the voices are already muffled. We don't know what exactly is happening. We are just, I was watching a few documentaries and we are getting to know about the situation of the Afghans in Afghanistan through the voice of somebody else, right? So it's beyond imagination. And these laws, they are called morality laws. Morality, moral police in itself is like a very obscure term, Geeta.
Yes.
And people are saying that just call them murder patrols already because it's the laws mandate the men to grow their beards. But for women, it's just terrible. They can't even have their voice. They can't even speak.
They can't speak in public. Forget about being a news journalist or a TV anchor, which Afghanistan had many during before Kabul fell, before the Taliban rule, and now the questions are not just about whether they can show their face, whether they're wearing a headgear or not. The fact that they don't have a voice, that they cannot speak in public.
Yeah.
Not just on TV.
Yeah.
Like they can't speak in public. Can you imagine the import of that? That they can't have their voice heard. How stifling that must be.
Right. There was this UN person who was saying that, 3 years ago, the women in Afghanistan, they could actually dream of, becoming the president or a leading voice in the country. But now thinking about their education is like a big thing. It's just not the morality laws. Since the takeover, we have been listening about, they have been banned from public places. They can't run beauty salons. They can't go to doctors to be operated. They can't be they can't be operated by a male doctor.
They can't even be checked by a male doctor.
And you are not educating the women, so how can they become female doctors?
And there's scarcity of women doctors. And most of them were not, for the first phase, were not even allowed to go out and practice. So there were a lot of them who rebelled. In fact, just on the occasion of the 3 years of the Taliban rule, I spoke with the Taliban political head in Doha, and he said he was actually speaking of and rejecting these claims. This rule of the morality police saying that women can't speak in public came after. But even before that, we've seen a lot when it comes to women's rights. Primarily, one of the major reasons why the Taliban has not been recognized as a government by the world. And when I asked him, he rejected those claims, saying, no, women have a lot of rights. We have medical staff in various places. They are allowed to study, so on and so forth. And we'll listen into what he says and we'll just come back.
First of all, the picture is not what is being portrayed by some media. For example, we have about 150,000 women, nurses, lady doctors in the Ministry of Public Health. We have 90,000 teachers in the Ministry of Education. Similarly, we have women employees, officials in the Ministry of Interior, as a policewoman. In the investigation section, we have women. We have women in the national ID department. Women in other, also in the education ministry, their offices and others where they are needed. Furthermore, all women who were working in the past regime, they are receiving their salaries while they are at whom they are regularly receiving their salaries. So it is not the picture is not that there is no women are working or the picture is very negative. It is not that. Come to Afghanistan and see the ground realities with their own eyes. You will have a clear picture in a clear perception.
Okay, I intend to travel to Afghanistan, so thank you there.
I mean, that sounds really absurd, Geeta.
It does.
So, how? I mean, why would that be the reason that you want to portray something else, which we know clearly it's not happening?
Because they are on the back foot. Look, even now, after the muzzling of the voices of women in Afghanistan, after this new morality law, the United Nations had come out and expressed concerns, talking about the distressing, vision of Afghanistan, which is absolutely dark.
Yeah.
The Taliban have come out and rejected these concerns of the United Nations. They see no wrong. That they're not seeing that there's something fundamentally wrong with these policies is troublesome. Also, which just means that what is the international community doing, Anna?
Right.
They continue to engage. There are no rules that are being set is because a few countries have taken a decision that irrespective of what's happening in Afghanistan, they'll continue to engage because that's more important. Then the other side, which is the West, is falling to that argument saying that Afghanistan is geostrategically important. So if we don't engage and we reject them because of this, then China, Russia will find more space in Afghanistan. But should that be the argument any which way? Should that be the reason why you're not going to think of how to push, the Taliban on being more progressive?
Yeah, just before we come to that, the strategic dimensions and the international community, of course, we have talked about it, that, it feels that it's just a subject. It has been reduced to a subject matter of rhetorics. That what have been, something oppressive laws, some oppressive laws come up and the Amnesty International tweets that, they should be retreated. Moral policing should not exist. This shouldn't happen, But then beyond that, what? But we'll come to that. But before that, ministry spokesman, Maulvi Abdul Ghaffar Farooq, he has said, that I am quoting him, he said that, Inshallah, we assure you that this Islamic law will be of great help in the promotion of virtue and the elimination of vice. So I want to understand that, how is this?
What is strange is that they're redefining virtue, which does not fall under Sharia.
Right.
If you go to clerics who actually speak, has Saudi Arabia muzzled women's voices?
Exactly.
Is UAE doing that?
Exactly.
In fact, if anything, they're opening up more to women's rights.
Exactly.
And the Taliban is following a kind of Sharia that does not exist. Even for those who criticize the Sharia and say that it is regressive, even they would say that this is a new form of Islamic law that they want to practice, which does not exist. So what are they trying to do? They're just trying to control women in the country like they always did. There have been reports of public flogging again, so on and so forth. Maybe in rural Afghanistan. Again, a denial that came from Sohail Shaheen that no such thing is happening. But the fact of the matter is that you're leading to that if they do not follow these bans.
Right.
What happens to the women? What's the punishment? What will they have to suffer? Is it going to be public? How humiliating for women to be. How humiliating it is for a woman to be an Afghan today in Afghanistan.
Yeah. What is left of and what is left for
the women?
The women in Afghanistan. This documentary that I was seeing, this showed that how they are, because they have to earn. Right. I mean, they are not able to earn. There's no job. There's nothing. So, and those beauty salons owners, they are running the salons in secret because that's what they have to.
Not just salons. We are just doing at India Today Global. We're doing a story just after this decision.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic story by a reporter, Ishita, on secret schools.
Oh. Wow.
That there are secret schools that women are teaching girls, children in their homes so that they don't go without an education.
Exactly.
How is that allowed?
Yeah. But they also think that why do the Taliban really fear educated women? And I was reading this and some reporter had answered this, that even though a certain section of the Taliban believes that women should be educated, they want to keep, kindling to the ultra-conservative groups who support the Taliban. So if they think that if they go against their conservative beliefs, this might push their supporters towards other groups, like, the Islamic State group, which could eventually lead to the Taliban losing their hold over power. So that is that was actually mind-boggling that, this is the reason that they fear educated women, that fearing.
But it is to a certain extent quite true, which is why I say that the leadership in Doha is far removed from the reality on the ground in Afghanistan, one.
Yeah.
Secondly, even those sitting in Kandahar which is the chief of the Taliban, the man who actually controls everything, which is Haibatullah Akhundzada, who sits in Kandahar. And why I say this is that, when the Taliban was returning, they were back in power in Afghanistan, took control of Kabul. And when people said that now what happens to women, what happens to rights, so on and so forth, they allayed all those fears, saying that no, they are going to look at all that. It is not going to be a regressive government, so on and so forth. But then also the realization that the fighters who were fighting for them in Afghanistan, fighting the foreign forces, fighting the so-called moderate government that they thought were puppets of the West, so on and so forth, the ones who they were fighting were considered anti-Islamic, kafirs, people who did not believe in the word of God. And many of these fighters from rural Afghanistan especially, who were they? They were actually those who thought that the glorious days of the Taliban, where they could flog women and keep them in check and keep them under cover in their control, who ruled Afghanistan with the kind of brute show of masculinity in public, had all come to an end. So they wanted those glorious days back. So why were they standing behind Akhundzada and all the others and fighting? Because they said, when we are independent again, independent of the foreign forces, we will have those days that will be back. Now that's a promise that this leadership has to keep.
Yeah.
So allowing all this women's education and all, and allowing them to roam around in public spaces with their face visible was or is unacceptable to this very same base of the Taliban. This is their base. Their base is not the educated lot who are sitting quietly very, very mildly resisting the leaders right now because they have nowhere else to go, or else not resisting at all but sitting quietly, maybe trying to affect change, bring about change, because running away doesn't help. Many have already fled the country who had taken an extreme position against the Taliban. There was no way they could have survived there. So many left back. So many of them killed. Because they could not leave the country. They could not flee the country. We've seen visuals of that. Yeah, and we've discussed that a lot. But then this is their base. And so no matter what you do, there are two things in any country, Anna. One is you want to become a global leader or an important voice for the world, but you will never become that for the world till your own base back home is not strong enough for you to continue as leadership or as a leader. Some policies in any country, by the way, is criticized by the world. But the leadership in that country does not really care about international opinion on those counts, is because your vote bank, your base for your power has to stay consolidated and intact.
You have to cater.
In this case, if they move very far away and try catering to a pandering to what others want, they lose this base. So while everything is very, like we're talking about how bad it is, and it is bad.
Definitely, yeah.
So the question about whether if the US should have allowed this to happen in the manner in which it happened. Why wasn't there a smooth transition? Why the sudden withdrawal? It's a disaster. Afghanistan is a story of a disaster created by America. You do right by the people if you have intervened, and you don't leave and abandon them the way you have. Because now they have their politics, they have their money. If Trump comes to power, he's never going back in. If Kamala comes to power, because it was under Biden administration that they withdrew, they cannot come in. They are going to stay out of Afghanistan.
And even now, just recently, yesterday only, it has become like a political
of course, it has become a political. Trump is trashing them left, right, and center. Although
it was his decision.
Yeah, but then why did Biden follow through?
Yeah, that's the question.
Why did the Democrats follow through? Because they also cannot afford or could not continue to afford this war. It had become unpopular. Body bags back home became again. See? This is also domestic politics, that they could not afford the war. They're heading into elections. They know Trump will use it. They've just come, winning one, and they know that they need to stay strong for the next. And if they would have said, we are not going to withdraw, it would have been unpopular back home.
Right.
So they didn't care about the entire world saying that, this is not how you do it, and not so suddenly,
and
for
not
sure.
So chaotically, like
that was sudden.
How chaotic it was,
and for sure, they still did it because that was the deadline set by the previous administration, which had lost, and they went ahead doing it to save their own skin and their political capital back home. Whether if it meant anything about their political capital in Afghanistan didn't really matter at that point in time. So they can't come back in. What have you left for the... Everybody's asking America, what the hell did you do?
Yeah. Now, then, why is it so easy for the international community to not pay heed?
So they are paying heed, but it's not easy.
No,
because what do you do?
Because remember, we discussed Iran and we saw how the Mahsa Amini protests, escalated. There were, they were being oppressed like anything, right? And there was protest, so the international community intervened. We discussed, the media was discussing.
The West very clearly supported those protests and said, freedom and all of that. They put all their energy there.
Yeah.
They're not putting any energy here. Last time also when we discussed Mahsa Amini, I said the very same thing. Why are they okay being friends with autocrats and autocracies and monarchies in other parts of the world, but only have a problem with oppression in Iran? And why is it okay for them to engage the Taliban, but not Khamenei and the clerics of Iran.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not justifying that they ought not to or ought to, but the fact is that then how are they doing it in Afghanistan? Because that for them is important right now. And that's why the UNAMA chief, Rosen Otunbayeva, who was the president of Kazakhstan, has been raising concerns, and there is hardly anything that has happened on the ground. Now, what is the Taliban suffering? The Taliban is suffering sanctions from the West.
Yeah.
Who suffers the most in a sanctioned regime? It is the women. If food is scarce, who will eat first? The men and children.
The children and men, yeah.
I don't even know if it's children and then men.
Yeah, it's the men and then.
I don't know. For some households, it could be children and then men and then women. For many others, it could be men and then children, especially if they're girl child, if it's a girl child.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So then we don't know. Either way, who suffers the most? So is this sanction for those who are victims of the Taliban, or are the sanctions for the Taliban? Because I see them quite well fed.
Of course.
Then if they have all the food on their table,
yeah,
and this malnutrition and hunger that is being reported in Afghanistan, who is suffering?
Right. That's the million-dollar question. Because I mean...
So you have muzzled their voices. They do not have enough to feed their mouths when it comes to the female gender in the country. You do not have enough resources to pull them out of this hell. And you do not have enough power right now, or you're not showing that power to clamp down on the Taliban so they stop this utter nonsense. Because you're too stretched waging wars in other parts of the world.
And the sanctions imposed by all these Western countries, I remember asking you last time as well, because on the Taliban regime, and they were, like you explained, that they were meant to ensure that the foreign aid reaching Afghanistan does not fall into the hands of the Taliban. But then several, like you are also explaining, and the Afghani political, commentators have also explained and said that that's already happening, that the Taliban have been able to appropriate these funds through intimidation and coercion. So people are saying that sanctions are not bringing any of the desired results, that they are thinking that, okay, we'll sanction the Taliban so they'll end this repression. But they think that, okay, this is an internal matter. The Taliban think this is an internal matter. I am suppressing and they are under this delusion that they are not even suppressing or oppressing women. So these sanctions are not working anything that is going against, like you explained, the Taliban. The women are suffering. The Afghan humans have ultimately become like a footnote in the discourse of this entire thing.
Absolutely.
Right. So then don't you think that there should be like another alternative to address this? Because like you explained, right, that they don't want to engage. They can't engage with Taliban, other countries, not only specifically the West, but I'm speaking of India, China, Pakistan, all these neighboring countries as well. But they can't engage with the Taliban. This will mean this will mean that they are, officially recognizing the Taliban regime.
The Indian government engages the Taliban.
In terms
exactly
of
what
aid.
I'm saying. No.
Okay.
In terms of the government. Do you know how many countries are engaging? No. We're not recognizing them. But we're engaging the Taliban because we need to know that that it's a country that we need to work with. Otherwise, it'll be
of course, we have
an anti-India, AFPAC region that will mean a lot of trouble for India. So because of the problems that we see strategically for India, we're engaging the Taliban.
Okay.
Everybody is engaging the Taliban. What is the Moscow format? Where the where countries come together to discuss forward movement of the Taliban in order to have them be recognized. But Taliban will have to do all of that. But now I see that, and I think that the Taliban thinks they're engaging with us. We're in trouble. They're engaging. And they do have friends in certain quarters. So, and they see that the West is quite stretched with Israel, Hamas, and Russia, Ukraine, so on and so forth. So they are trying to push boundaries, I think, and seeing whether if pushing those boundaries will actually help them further their interests back home. I'm sure there must have been pushback from the very hardline faction within the country to say, well, we helped you fight the war. We helped you win. Where are the glorious days of the Taliban?
Right.
But it is for the international community to ensure that those glorious, so-called glorious days do not return. And that's really not happening right now. Way forward, I think, the international community will have to take it upon themselves. At the cost of saying, oh, we'll have to open another front. Open the front. You're the ones who brought this upon Afghanistan. Open the bloody front.
Okay. So is there any next step that you can think of that could probably pressurize the Taliban enough to not resort to such a...
See, I would say, and it's easy to say, sitting in India, sitting so peacefully in a very safe environment. It's easy to say, women also will have to stand up for their rights, so on and so forth. It's very difficult when you see people and no respect for life, for properties, to see no respect for life, meaning not just yours, your families, being killed in front of you, being, and losing your own life. And the oppression. And it is not easy because it is not one swipe of a kill. The torture. So how do you expect me to say that no people in Afghanistan will also have to fight their own fight, which is what, Trump and many others say. Fight your own fight. We're not fighting your battles. But you created this space. So now you better come and, fix it. The international community will have to intervene over here. This cannot go on. We cannot have the United Nations, which is actually a toothless tiger, like many people say. And many in India have been quoting or citing UN as a toothless tiger, including our own external affairs ministers, for a reason. Our reasons are because UN does not show enough or does not have the gumption or the strength and now even the credibility when it comes to India's concerns on various counts, and that it is not representative of the world. But it indeed is not. The vetoes don't help if wars such as the complete annihilation in Gaza can continue. If we see the Russia-Ukraine war continue in the manner in which it is, and the vetoes happening on all ends, and now we're looking at this. And we've been looking at this for some time now, even before the wars. And no solution in sight.
I mean, we have reiterated it enough about the UN and its so-called, credibility just gone for a toss. There's also another aspect, Geeta, about the International Criminal Court, because I remember when this was when this happened, the takeover, and it's been 2 years now, 3 years. And it was always said that now there's a legitimate government gone, so it's time for the ICC to intervene, to come as a potential, international entity capable of addressing all these challenges, all these crimes, ensuring accountability, all these heavy words. But now, what is the ICC doing? How there's no justice, there's no crime. There are crimes, there's no justice. There's no due process, there's no accountability. So
the International Criminal Court has some founding treaties. The Rome Statute is one of them. Now, under the Rome Statute, the ICC does have the jurisdiction on some areas. Now, what are those areas? Genocide is one of them. Then the second one is to prosecute cases against humanity, anything that happens against humanity, crimes against humanity, I mean. And what we are seeing over here falls in the realm of crimes against humanity for sure. War crimes is the third one. And the fourth one is, which falls within the ICC jurisdiction, is crimes of aggression.
Okay.
So on various counts, you've seen various cases where, organizations have taken matters to the ICC. In this case, there are reports, umpteen number of them, on crimes that have been committed against humanity, the human rights violations that have occurred in Afghanistan. So yes, the ICC has been looking into those cases. What happens with the International Criminal Court is that it has automatic jurisdiction over crimes that have been committed after July 1st, 2002, when the Rome Statute actually came into force, the 1998 Rome Statute. And what are the situations? When a crime is committed on the territory of a state that has ratified.
Yeah.
When a citizen of a state that has ratified the Rome Statute commits a crime.
Okay.
And when the United Nations Security Council refers a case to the ICC. So even if in that case, even if it's not ratified the ICC, because the UNSC has taken so motu cognizance of a crime having been committed. Either which way, the ICC can rule against a particular state. But I see that there is a lot of geopolitical compulsions where you're not seeing states come as much as organizations that have gone forward and taken the Taliban and Afghanistan to the ICC and have been demanding investigations and prosecution. However, not everything is binding. And over here also, it is not binding compulsorily because, again, which is why we keep saying that UN bodies, these international watchdogs, criminal courts, are not always, do not have the teeth to really bring about or affect change. It has to come through bilateral engagements of various countries with the Taliban and ensuring that they know that there will be a price to pay at this point in time. Even if they're paying a price, Anna, it doesn't seem like they know that there will be a heavier price to pay for the Taliban.
Okay. So then how do you see India coming in? Like we spoke of the engagement and everything. We saw foreign aid coming in.
So India has been engaging very regularly with the Taliban on a few things. One is because its own interests lie very deep within Afghanistan. We have development projects. We had development projects there. We do not want to lose ground there, although, yes, a lot of ground has been lost already. But we are also engaging with them in providing aid and discussing women's rights. So India, absolutely, India has been discussing women's rights, women's freedom. But the higher stakeholder in all this is, in terms of being at the receiving end, maybe India, but in terms of one who can really affect change and bring about change, it should be America. But we're not seeing the kind of engagement that we should have seen from America in terms of action in Afghanistan.
Yeah. No, but I was speaking in terms of because India is being,
Well, we are hosting the Taliban, we are hosting Afghan refugees in India. We are hosting Afghan women who fled from there.
Yeah, because
and we are hosting the Afghan cricket team as well, who still don't go under the Taliban flag. They still go play under the old Afghan flag.
Yeah.
So all that is happening. In fact, Suhail Shaheen actually thanked India for supporting the Afghan cricket team because now they're engaging the Afghan cricket team. When they won their beautiful matches, in the World Cup, every time you'd see a conversation, the same thing that other leaders have started doing, congratulating them and having a conversation with Rashid Khan, the captain. All of that happened. So the Taliban is trying to get on the right side of the international community. But these things show what it means to be under the Taliban government, especially for women. And if the Taliban continues the way they are continuing, with what they're doing, then there is no space for women and women's rights. The world can keep saying we are engaging the Taliban, But the ones who are suffering. The ones who are victims are victims.
Yeah, of course. And I was speaking on the sense that, on the lines that, India being a leading voice of the global South, India being, this aspirational thing that, we want to become a Vishwa Guru. Although I think there was this news in the beginning of this year, we saw China becoming the first country to recognize a Taliban envoy by accepting Bilal Karimi, a former Taliban spokesman, as an official envoy in Beijing. Although
and now
China,
UAE also has done the same.
Has done the same. Although China clarified that this did not equate to official recognition.
No, it did not.
Yeah.
So we are every country, because they need to engage and work. A lot of them have now started working with the ambassador or the diplomat who the government in Kabul is recognizing as their person. Because now what is happening, Anna, is that there are embassies across the world, Afghan embassies. Most of these Afghan embassies right now have officers from the older regime who are sitting there and criticizing the Taliban because they don't think like the Taliban, right?
Yeah.
And in the European countries, including in India, there was a huge thing about whether they should be continuing staying in that embassy or not. And they still are allowed to, in fact, in DC as well, where, of course, they're not going to accept a Taliban ambassador unless and until the country is recognized.
Definitely.
So up until then, the embassy earlier used to be maintained by Afghanistan. Now there is a lot of aid that goes to in maintaining these embassies too. But it's a very, very strange situation where the embassies of a country are not working for the country anymore, but working for those who have had to flee Afghanistan in fear of the Taliban persecuting them. And they are still sitting in those embassies. And so these are the countries where it had become inconvenient, and that's why they ended up, and because there's so much of engagement and they're traveling to Afghanistan, they ended up recognizing an ambassador from the Taliban regime. That again does not amount to recognizing the country.
Yeah. The point I was coming at was
the government. I mean, not the country, the government.
Yeah. The point I was coming at is that we know China is sort of taking the lead, that, there's strategic interests of China, Pakistan, India. And of course, there's also like a fear of extremism, ISKP, TTP, all these Pakistan, Taliban definitely, working and functioning. So there's a risk element for India as well. So China is sort of taking the lead, although there were commentators who are saying that Taliban also knows that.
No, there's a difference here. China has stakes in Pakistan, Gwadar. Right. They can be impacted by not engaging the Afghans properly. Our stakes are different from China's.
Okay.
We don't have stakes in Pakistan and projects that will be hit. We want to continue engaging Afghanistan because we want the Iran-Afghanistan, Central Asia corridor to be fine, so we don't have to go through Pakistan for anything. So Afghanistan becomes important for us for connectivity. For the Chinese, if they don't have Afghanistan or the Taliban in their good books, the entire Gwadar port, Balochistan, that entire region is unsafe, and they have invested a lot of money in that Belt and Road initiative of the Chinese, of Xi Jinping. It's his dream child. It's his baby.
Yeah.
And that project goes through Balochistan. So for them, the stakes are higher, Anna.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay. Thanks, Geeta, for explaining that. I think we'll conclude it by saying that we discussed China, how China wants to tap into Afghanistan's so-called mineral reserves. Then Iran, of course, wants to, keep the West out of the region and suppress ISKP because ISKP is also very woe. Then Pakistan wants to contain the Pakistan Taliban over there. So it just boils down to the fact that salvaging Afghanistan right now for the international community
is the least of their priorities.
Right. If they'll do it for these particular reasons, because
not for the women.
Yeah. Not for the women, not for the humans, because humans definitely they are at the very
cost of human life in this part of the world means nothing for the international community. So, while they scream and say, oh, very sad, we're very saddened by it, to 1 or 2 loss of lives of their people compared to thousands of ours. That's how bad it is.
So clearly we know how that is reflecting on our geopolitical radar and the concerns. So thanks to you, Geeta, and thanks to all our lovely listeners and
viewers. Please keep commenting, keep telling us exactly what you think, the good, the bad, the ugly. We look forward to your comments.
Right. And we really want to have those reality checks because that's important. And there's a number which is 8588966996. And you could also email us on pods@indiatoday.com. And please don't forget to leave us a rating because those really matter. So thank you.